Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today my guest is Alvina Joshi, who has directed a film called My Grandfather's House. So do watch the whole video, like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Yeah. So my first question is like, what inspired you to become a filmmaker and why you choose filmmaking?
Um, I think when I was around 15 years old, I sort of started watching Indian regional cinema, and that then sort of translated into watching movies from around the world. Because up until then, I'd only sort of seen Hindi cinema that would be in the theaters with my parents. But then that changed when I was around 15, and that is what really sort of got me hooked. And then I started self-learning photography, and I somehow always used to read and write. So I think that things kind of all of the things just fell together, and that's how it all began.
Where you're from? Where you live?
I've grown up in Bangalore. I studied in Sweden for a few years, and now I'm in Mumbai.
What have you studied, ma'am, during your graduation days?
Right. So during graduation, I did my bachelor's in journalism, psychology, and English literature. That was in Bangalore. And then after that, I studied editing at Whistling Woods in Mumbai for 2 years.
Okay. And ma'am, in Whistling Wood, like, how long was the course there? It was a master course.
Yeah, it was a master course. So my course was 2 years, but they also have 3 years bachelor's degree courses. But I did the 2 years.
So there, ma'am, you found interest in documentaries, or you were always interested in documentaries?
No, I wasn't actually because my understanding of documentary was, these animal documentaries that we would watch on TV when we were growing up. So that was what I thought documentary was. But then when I was in Whistling Woods, we had a 1 week session on nonfiction where our teacher, Ramchandra sir, he introduced us to, and he showed us a lot of different documentaries, and just my entire understanding or my entire assumption of documentary just turned inside out. And I think for me that out of the 2 years in Whistling Woods, that 1 week was really the highlight. I mean, and I don't know why or how it was just one of those very love at first sight moments for me, documentary. And I think also somehow for people who are just starting out or people who are working independently, documentaries just practically, like financially, they can be a little easier to make. So of course that also plays a part.
Ma'am, what kind of film he showed to you?
He showed us a lot. I mean, I remember there was this one short documentary called Bolero. So it was Zubin Mehta conducting his orchestra, and they were playing the Bolero by Ravel. And it was a very short documentary where this orchestra comes and sets up, and sort of each orchestra member talks a little bit, and it ends with this piece. But I don't know that it just. I mean, after that, I think after watching that for the next month, I only listened to the bolero. I didn't listen to any other music. There was another documentary called Pa De Dieu, if I'm not wrong. It was just two ballet dancers, I think, dancing. That was it. So he showed us things like this. A lot of then of course he showed us Zoo and Glass, Weber and stuff. So it was just I'd never looked at documentary as a form that would allow for just so much expression and playing around with the form. And after that 1 week, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is even beyond fiction in terms of just how wild you can be.
So ma'am, then what did you like after you, before making your film, like, did you assisted someone or did you work somewhere else?
Mm, no, I did not end up assisting. But I worked as an editor and I still do. So I edited ads, I edited films for friends, I edited series, I edited feature length documentaries, which also of course only furthered my interest in making my documentary. But I worked quite a bit as an editor, independently.
And ma'am, what was your parents' reaction when you said you want to go into filmmaking?
Um, Contrary to the common experience, I had absolutely no problem convincing my parents to let me get into filmmaking because my father was always interested in the same thing. But then he did the whole engineering IT job. He took that route. So he did not want that for me. In fact, I was convincing myself that I should become a still photographer because I did not know anybody who was into filmmaking. No friends, no relatives, just nobody. Like I did not know a single human being who works in. So I was honestly really afraid of the whole thing. So I kept sort of convincing myself that oh I'll figure it out with journalism and photography. But then my father sat me down one day and he was like, listen, if you want to get into filmmaking, then what are you so afraid of? Why are you not? Just be honest with yourself, and that gave me the courage to. But they never stopped me. Like there was absolutely no like story of struggle there.
Ma'am, you have gone to Sundance as well. If
Yeah. So I'm part of this fellowship called Sundance India, which is why I was there. So it's a fellowship for filmmakers aged 18 to 25, film directors. So what you do is that you send in a short film that you've made. Then after that, you fill in a proposal of something that you're working on right now that you would apply to the program with. You also write two more films that you would want to make. Then in the next round, you submit another film that you made. Then there's an interview, and then it's a year-long fellowship basically where there's 10 people in the cohort. Then each person has one mentor who help you with developing your project, and they take you there twice. So once for the orientation and once for the festival, and they also give you a small fund. So it's a really lovely program.
Ma'am, how long were you there?
So in the orientation, I was there for a week, and during the festival, I was there for 4 days, and the rest of the year, it's an online program. So my cohort is basically from all over the world. Everybody does their meetings over there.
Ma'am, how difficult it is to make a short documentary and get funds in India?
It's hard because we don't have as many sources of funding as people in the say in the USA or in Europe do. There's not much support for documentaries in India. I was only able to make this documentary because PSBT has a program called Doc Coming, where again they select a small cohort and they give you mentorship, and then in the end you do a pitch, and if you're sort of successful, then they fund your film. So that's one of the very few funding opportunities that one has in India. So I think a lot of people usually just self-fund their documentaries, or you apply for funds abroad, but it can be extremely competitive. Um, so it's unfortunately it's not as easy as it should be.
And ma'am, how much time it took to get the funds when you applied and when you get the funds?
So with Dog Commune, it was a clear thing because that it was a there was a certain time in which the program would begin and end. So, for instance, my cohort had 10 people. We went through 6 months or a year, something like that. We did that whole program, and then the 10 of us pitched our film, and then two of us got funding. So that was a very clear cycle. That okay, it starts on so and so day and it ends on so and so day. But if you're just sort of applying to grants, then you never know because like one grant, especially with feature length documentaries, one grant usually is not enough to fund your whole documentary. So the idea is that you get the money from multiple grants, right? And all of these you can usually apply just once a year. So if you're successful, then great, it can maybe a year or two. But if you're not, if you're in a situation where you have to apply multiple times, it takes a really, really long time. Like people spend anywhere with the 5 years, 7 years, 9 years making their documentary. So it takes that time to get all the financing in place.
Ma'am, let's talk about your short film, which is My Grandfather's House. Ma'am, how the idea came for the story because it's really a personal story. So how the idea came to make the film?
The idea came because my grandfather passed away, and he he passed away at such a time when I was of that age where one starts to look at themselves, their families critically. Because I think before that, in your late teens, you look at the world critically, but then it takes a little bit of time to do that to yourself and to your, to your loved ones. So I think his death kind of coincided with that time in life. And then after his death, there was this sort of, what do you say, um, like a decision maker has passed away. So now what happens next? Um, so this sort of this vacuum of a patriarch in the family, that is something that also triggered this. And after he passed away, I and again, right, because I was growing up now, my family was also comfortable telling me things that they had not told me before because I was a child. So I started hearing things about him that were the exact opposite of what I had experienced with him. So then that contradiction led to confusion, anger, led to hurt, quite a lot of it actually. So then I think the film then became a way to cope with it and to get some catharsis and to just understand and figure out what my position is in all of this that is happening.
While making the film, and were you scared because you were putting a lot of yourself and your family out there?
Yeah, I was definitely scared because of course this thought comes, that like to what end am I making this, and is it really right to sort of put my family out there in such a vulnerable way? And it's my first film, so there was not only as a family member, but there was also anxiety as a filmmaker of, am I doing this right? Is it good enough? Um, this sort of sacrifice or this courage that my family is showing, is my skill worthy of that, or is it? So there was a lot of anxiety. But then I think this urge to sort of speak out about something that contributed greatly, because I knew that whatever I was, the the culture that he was brought up in, and therefore the way he behaved, that was wrong. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. Then yeah, I mean, it's this whole thing, right? Of, okay, one can share posts on Instagram criticizing everything around them, but if you're not going to do that to your own family, so I think then that helped me to some extent to overcome this anxiety and this fear.
And ma'am, how big was the crew while making the film?
Uh, the crew was three people, including me. So it was me, my cinematographer Omkar,
Okay,
and my sound recordist, sound designer, and associate director Rahul, and
okay,
then I had my editor Nidhi,
okay.
and Tapan did the music. So during shoot it was the three of us, and then in the edit Nidhi came, and then it was four.
Okay, okay. And how much time it took to complete the film, ma'am?
It took around. It was a process that took 1.5 to 2 years, because initially I was shooting on my own and it was a very different film. And honestly, it took me a couple of tries to get it right. Like it wasn't that I landed there on day one and it fell into place. There were 2 or 3 schedules that I had to completely just sideline the footage because it was not working. And it took me, I think, a year to figure out that I need to be in the film, because earlier I wasn't. I was just documenting my grandmom and the house and my aunt and my father, but that was just not working. And my mentor, Hansa, she had mentioned to me that, oh, your presence needs to be felt, and I was very hesitant. So I remember she told me, even if it's just your voice, even if you're just seen in a reflection accidentally, even that will do. But your presence is important. Um, and then I thought about it quite a bit, and then I sat down to really like design the film, which is something I had not done before. Before I would just be like, oh, okay, maybe this scene would work, and then go and shoot it. But then this time I really sat down and I designed it, and then like I remember I opened Canva and I made this like bulletin board, like a mind map thing, and that's when I felt like, no, I need to be in the film, because whatever the conflict is, that's in my head. Because everybody else, all the adults in the film, are like at peace with the situation. They've had decades to process this information, so they've accepted it. But I had not had decades. I had had a year or two at that point. And I was also much younger than my father and my mother, of course. So all this sort of upheaval and the storm was inside me. So it didn't make sense to make them express what I was feeling, and I had to put myself there. It just took me a while to arrive.
Ma'am, by designing, you mean like you have written the structure of a film or have an idea about the structure?
No, not the structure because we still ended up shooting a lot that we just did not know would happen. So the structure was decided on the edit only. But by design, I mean some of the shots, like say the house, sorry, the walls with the reflection, for example, or the tree. The cotton was unplanned because it just happened when we were there. But the tree, or the photographs, things like that, I had to sort of design, and also just like what the tone of the film should be. Um, I was very clear that I did not want men on screen visually. Like I wanted that house to feel that only women are here, which is why there's just three women, and you hear my father's voice. So these few elements I really wanted to be there. And in terms of conversations, of course, there was no way to design them, but I knew what emotional notes I need to hit. So then, while me and my grandmom were talking, there were instances where I would say something or ask something that would elicit a certain response. So it was a mix of that, and it was a mix of like complete surprises, like the monkeys on the terrace, for example. There is no way I could do it. So, yeah.
Ma'am, it's a documentary, but did you tell your grandmother like to act something?
So I tried that initially, but it did not work because when, at least in what I've seen so far, when uh, people who sort of not been in front of the camera before, when when you tell them to act, they act like actors. Like they have a notion of what acting is, and then they try to act that, and then it becomes very evident. Um, and it takes like I think a special skill to to sort of get it right, which I don't have yet. I have not directed actors ever. So that like asking her to act was not working because I mean for her it is of course it's a big deal, right? She's never been in front of the camera before. She had never expected that she would be. So even something as simple as when we're taking a shot of her cooking, if she knows that we're going to shoot, she would like to sort of put on powder and jewelry, and you convince her not to. So somebody like that you can't be like okay say this that. So that was just not it was just impossible. There was no scope of making her like.
And ma'am, how was the like post production work? Like how much time it took to like
Hmm.
edit, sound design, everything, ma'am?
Post production edit took us a month. Sound design took another a month or 3 weeks around. Edit, we had to, of course, figure out the structure and we had to figure out how we want to show this space and what the time experience should be. So my editor came up with this really interesting idea that he said that we shouldn't like sort of reveal the geography of the space. Like it shouldn't be these wide shots where you know exactly how the house is laid out. So for like almost half an hour, you're just given bits and pieces of the house. Like for example, even the balcony, he wanted to do it in such a way that it would feel like there's only one balcony, and in the end, you sort of realize that. And then about time, I told him that I wanted it to sort of be ambiguous, where you don't know like, if one day has passed or two or three or how many. You know? You may get a sense that it's not it hasn't been like months, but I didn't want it to be specific that you know exactly how many days. So that sort of strange, like a little bit of ambiguity was something that we wanted. Um, yeah, and then of course how to balance this argument between my grandmother and my father because we didn't want the tone of the documentary to be accusatory. Like we didn't sort of want it to be, oh look at how terrible this man is. It shouldn't be that. Like there has to be some kind of a balance of perspectives, and there has to be some kind of nuance and understanding where everybody's coming from, including my grandfather. So that was something that we had to be mindful of. So these things we took care of in the edit, and that was really fun actually. It was a massive learning experience. And then in sound, so that location is horribly noisy. I mean, the house is right on the main road, and the entire day there's vehicles and the entire night there's dogs. So there is not like this whole idea of like small town peace. It does not exist there. It's that house is literally noisier than my Mumbai. So my sound designer had to sort of literally salvage, like save the sound quite a bit, and he did. He did a superb job with that. And then with sound, we wanted to. So the idea was that I really wanted my grandfather's presence to be felt without constantly cutting to his photo because I would not. So then we sort of used this idea of that tree. So the creaks, the wind, the sound of the dry leaves, or then when we wanted the house to feel alive, that the sounds from old family videos and water. So just to again create that, um, it's not just sounds of things you're seeing on screen, but using these. I mean, all I can think about is the word abstract, but using these abstract sounds to create a certain experience. That was something that we found figured out during the course.
Ma'am, what was the most difficult challenge when making the film?
The most difficult was, of course, just the like going through sort of grieving about my grandfather, then the whole sort of self-confidence crisis of am I doing this right and should I be doing this? And then I think also having to be in front of the camera, but then I mean I'm directing, so I have to know what's going on behind the camera. So sort of having my mind in both of these places. So these three were the most difficult things. But then my crew was really amazing, and my cinematographer, he speaks Marathi as well. So there were a lot of moments where we would kind of set the frame and be like, okay, this is what we're going for. Now within the scope, I told him that use your discretion and move the camera whenever you have to. So what we did was then my sound recordist in those instances he would give the headphone to my cinematographer. My cinematographer was constantly listening to what conversation my grandmom and me are having, and then he would decide when to move the camera. So he had to think like an editor as well, and he did it. He did really good at it. So then we had to come up with these, or I mean, on a practical level, then the difficult thing was that on a budget that does not allow you to rent out lights or any equipment beyond a basic camera and a sound recorder, then how do you do those reflections of water in the air? So that is something that Rahul, who did sound, he came up with. So he used a plastic tub and a black cloth and aluminum foil and water and a light bulb to sort of, you know, so because we did not have the money to do anything fancy. So then these were sort of the challenges, but then my very tiny crew, two people, figured everything out. Sure. So my grant was 2,50,000. So we made the film 2,50,000.
Great, ma'am. Ma'am, are you doing like currently it is screening anywhere?
It's screened in Chandigarh day before yesterday, and it's screened in Mumbai at Ghar yesterday. I don't know what's next for the film, but I'm hoping that it screens around a little bit more. It's been at a couple of festivals now, so I'm hoping for more screenings around the country. So fingers crossed.
Ma'am, do you plan like put it out there like online on online
Yeah,
platform?
I'd love to. I mean, once it's sort of done with festivals and physical screenings, then I'd love to put it out online because I want it to reach as many people as possible.
And ma'am, are you shooting something or writing something else?
Yeah, so Rahul and I are working on a feature-length documentary now, which we've pitched at a couple of places, and this is also something that we've been working on for nearly 2 years now. So we're shooting this in Assam. It's the story of his ancestral house, which is going to be torn down because a highway is coming up there. So yeah, we're just trying to gather the funds and sort of figure out the film for ourselves. That's what's going on right now. And I work as an editor in Mumbai, so there's editing projects going on.
Ma'am, where in Assam? Like because I used to live in Assam and my aunts are from Assam. I'm just
Oh,
curious.
okay. So this is it's in Lower Assam near Bongaigaon. There's a village called Khirpuji. So it's like around 5 hours away from Guwahati, which I'm like,
I have only lived 1 year there.
oh, where did you live?
Jorhat.
Oh, you live in Guwahati.
Yeah, yeah. So currently, if you will recommend few films and filmmakers.
Okay, so in recent times, I've been supremely lucky to witness The Zone of Interest, which is an amazing film. Honestly, after watching that film, I have not been able to watch anything. It's incredible what they've managed to do with the sound. And yeah, so Zone of Interest is one. At Mami, I watched a film called Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell, which I think it just made me experience like a state of consciousness that I've not experienced before. So, and it was the first time directed. It was his first feature length film. So that was really, really incredible. Um, there's a documentary that's right now in the festival circuit also called Mother of All Lives, which I think is like I learned a lot about how in a non-fiction space, like just how much you can push this element of design and how emotionally effective it can be. Um, and from India, there was a film at Sundance, a fiction film called Girls Will Be Girls, which is also, of course, just amazing. And watching that made me realize that before this, nobody had captured the school going experience of an Indian girl, and how we sort of operate in these very conservative, very restrictive spaces. So I think this director of Girls Will Be Girls, Shochi, she's the first one to have done that. And it was a gorgeous film.
Ma'am, you're a member of the Chitra Collective?
Yes, I am.
She is uh,
Yes, she's part of it as well. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
great, ma'am. Ma'am, if somebody wants to like assist you, how they can approach you?
Um, I mean, Instagram, I suppose, is the easiest way these days. So that would be it. Yeah.
Okay. And do you prefer like film school student or
No,
they?
no, not at all. I mean, my just on this film, the person who edited, he's not a film school student, and I don't believe that going to film school is the only way to learn cinema. Not at all. So I have no preference. Any such thing.
Great. Ma'am, last question is if somebody wants to become a filmmaker, what advice would you give to them?
Honestly, this is it's going to sound very cheesy, but I think it's the only like real advice. Just pick up a camera and shoot, really, because I mean, how else are you going to learn to do it? And assisting is great, of course, but then when you're assisting, like it's not your baby. Like not all of the responsibilities on your shoulder. When you're assisting, your responsibility is to be a good assistant. But when you're making your own film, your responsibility is to make a good film. And these are two very different things. So if you want to be a filmmaker, just pick up a camera and shoot, and then the opportunities will come in. Like once you have something in your hands, then the funding will come in, or crew members will come in, or at least this motivation to finish what you've started that will come in. And I mean now again, this is something that everybody says, which is very true. It's really easy these days. I mean, we're not in an era where like you have to buy really expensive film or you have to go and develop. It's none of that, right? It's literally like our phones shoot 4K. Our phones have pro modes where you can literally change any setting. Um, so in terms of editing, there's free editing software. So it's become much cheaper these days and much more accessible. Yeah.
Ma'am, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akash.